This is Hog Farmer Chris from the Hog Farmers Charitable Foundation. And before you send in the Red Zone in the lab, check out our Amazon Smile, a simple way to support the Hog Farmers Charitable Foundation every time you shop, and it's no cost to you.
We're back! Welcome back to Red Zone in the Lab with Deuce.
Welcome to a brand new season of the Red Zone in the Lab podcast, where nothing is off the table. We will be discussing entrepreneurship, education, Black history, health, movies, family, and of course, sports. So do yourself a favor, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow on all social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, you can always visit us at redzoneinTheLab.com.
Welcome back. This is Red Zone in the Lab podcast. I am Dion Deuce Blackney, and we are here with Logan Paulsen. How are you doing today, Logan?
I'm great, man. I like your new setup in the background there. That's nice.
Oh, yeah. Wifey, she finally gave me a wall.
You mentioned that when I saw you. Yeah, that's cool, man.
So it's almost done. Yeah, I appreciate that. So how have you been, Logan? How was your summer?
Summer was good, man. Just been busy, like obviously a lot of football stuff going on, but also there's, family and, I'm helping out at the high school coaching and doing some personal training. So just staying busy, and that's the way I like it, and it's good.
That's cool. So how was your new gig? Like, how was that experience for you? You looked excited on TV.
The sideline thing.
Yeah.
The sideline thing was a lot of fun, man. It was a very new experience. It was kind of cool to be on the sideline, like in the flow of the game, and I think that was fun. And like, obviously, like the challenges associated with that sideline interview thing are a little bit different than I think probably a lot of people would think, but I had a great time with it. And I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to do it.
So what are you looking for? You think it's going to be a difference in the upcoming season as far as the sideline reporting? You think the regular season will be different than the preseason?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the way they do it. It's kind of funny. Like the team is responsible for covering that game. And so they contract that out to, I think it's an ABC staff. So like Julie makes a recommendation, and thankfully I got the opportunity to do it. And then obviously it'll switch to like national crews, like the guys that you're familiar with. And I don't think we have any primetime games this year. So it won't be like Greg Olson or any of those guys. It'll be smaller crews that do that. And then their sideline reporting team, like from Fox, for example. So that's kind of how it'll be.
Yeah, I like Greg Olson. He's pretty good last year.
He does a great job, man.
Yeah.
Like, really, he's great insight. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about some football. What are some of your biggest surprises coming out of camp?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I don't know, man. It's so funny when you watch practice every single day. I don't know if there's anything surprising. I think the thing, maybe Jamin Davis is if I was going to like put my finger on something, I'd say like his progression is something that I kind of expected, but it's nice to see, kind of where he's at this point of the offseason, and hopefully he'll be contributing at a high level to this team. That's probably interesting. I'm a little surprised from a depth standpoint at DB that they didn't bring anybody in, a veteran. They brought some younger guys in, but they didn't bring a nice depth piece in. I think that's probably pretty surprising to me. So if I had to say from like logistics standpoint, that's something that I thought would have happened. Not someone who's going to play a ton of time for you necessarily, but someone you feel very comfortable if they did have to play. And instead they kind of went the opposite direction, which is probably, like I'm going to trust Ron on that. I'm going to trust the staff on that. They're all smart guys. But if I was the GM, if I was the head coach, I probably would have done something a little bit differently there.
And when it comes to like Jamin Davis, like my whole thoughts on him, he has been doing better. He has progressed well over the summer. But do you think that he was so far away that even the progression still keeps him kind of far away than what he actually can be?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think, he's last year was not great for him. I think it wasn't as bad as people want to say, but it wasn't good either, so it's kind of in this like C- kind of range in terms of grade, which is not necessarily winning football in the NFL. And I think the thing that I like in terms of progression is he just seems like he's much more confident. Like, I don't know if he's always doing the right thing, but he's at least doing the wrong thing going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that is better to me. Like a guy who's just playing with more confidence. He's fitting runs better. He's covering better. He was covering well last year, but he's covering even better now. And you can really see his athleticism kind of on display. And like, that's what I want to see. Like when you look at a guy like Micah Parsons, like his PFF grade without the sacks is just kind of average.
Exactly.
But at least he's going 1,000 miles an hour to the play. And that's what I want Jamin to do. And that's what it seems like he's doing. And I know a lot of like diehard, like analytics people are like, oh, well, that's not really good analysis from you. But that's important when I'm evaluating football players, is how confident they look and how fast they do the football. So yeah, I think you bring up a good point that he was so far back last year. Like, you know, what's he going to be this year? And I think this year he's going to be a solid starting linebacker in the NFL. And that's all you can ask for really at this point, right? Based on what you saw last year, I'd give him I'd say he's got he finished last year with a C-. I'd say he finishes with a B this year and probably a B+ if he continues to progress. But again, that remains to be seen.
I'm hoping that, because that pick would what's the word I'm looking for? Because a lot of fans are so upset about that pick. But if he can finally come around to be, just like you said, a starting linebacker in this league, that pick will make so much sense.
Right. And if he elevates the defense, I think that's the other point. I think like a lot of people are like, oh, they didn't bring a linebacker. And I think the staff here was counting on Jamin progressing, right? And it looks like he is progressing. So if he does do that, then the defense is going to play better, and the staff looks really smart from a personnel standpoint. But that remains to be seen.
Yeah, because I trust Ron. I mean, you know, he was a former linebacker. He was a pretty good linebacker, so I trust him over my instincts. I never played linebacker. So, kind of speaking of the staff, to piggyback on, is there a difference between pre-Sam Mills, post-Sam Mills when it comes to the defensive line from what you've seen?
Excuse me. I think. No, this is just kind of my general thought. And the reason I say that is because Skanina, at least this offseason, was running a lot of the drills in practice, is kind of the voice you'd hear on the field. And I think the thing that's been maybe the biggest difference maker, you know, and it's hard to know for sure, it's just what guys say in the building and stuff when you talk to them, is like the addition of Ryan Kerrigan. I think they were very familiar with Skanina, but I think Ryan's pass rush understanding has been a really nice addition, and hopefully can kind of help galvanize that group a little bit. And I think the thing that you're going to see from Skanina is a group that plays harder. He's a very passionate, emotional kind of guy, and he played very hard when he was a pro. And I think he's going to bring some of that to that group. And I think, you know, that'll be good. The thing that I want to see from that group, though, I think is, you know, that I haven't seen yet necessarily, is just how disciplined and detailed can that group be. And what I mean by that is, like, when you're rushing the passer, like, can we collapse the pocket? Can we contain the passer? Can we work the games? And they have shown signs of improving in that area, but they haven't really rounded the bend yet. And I that's the thing that I'm kind of keeping an eye on under his tutelage, Skanina's tutelage, and under Kerrigan's tutelage for that matter, going into the season, is can that group be super detailed oriented? But as of right now, it's hard to say a definitive difference between Sam Mills and Skanina, because, you know, Skanina was running most of practice. So it kind of feels and looks the same in the practices that I saw since the Sam Mills firing.
And hopefully they can be able to perform this weekend. I know the Jaguars have what's his name? Logan at right tackle. He's been in the league a few years. He's kind of underperformed. I think they got 2 rookies. And of course they got Brandon Sheriff, but hopefully they could be able to show out on this weekend. I think fan base, we really need that.
I think that's a great point. Like, Cam Robinson is a guy that got paid. He got franchise tagged this last offseason. Very talented guy. He's the left tackle, but obviously underperformed a little bit. And the other tackle,
Jake Lawson, that's his name.
Yeah, he's obviously not been. He's underperformed as well. You know, it's almost like they're working on a position battle between him and Little, the kid from Stanford a couple of years ago. So I think that's something, that should be taken advantage of and should play into the strengths of this team. Like, I expect Montez Sweat to have a very productive day, because, Robinson is talented, right? But he's not like that should be a matchup that favors Washington, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think I'd like to see, you know, everyone's been talking about Montez. I've been talking about Montez, how he feels different, how he looks different.
He does.
Let's see that. Let's see that executed on Sunday with a favorable matchup.
Yeah, because I believe that last year should have been his breakout year. Of course, he started off slow, and then he had the tragedy in his family, and then COVID, so everything kind of went downhill from that. But I'm expecting a big year for him. He's coming up on a contract year, and if he wants to get paid, he's going to have to show out.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
the calendar says that summer is ending soon, but we're still outside. So when it's time to hop in your ride, make sure you book the best mobile detailing service in the DMV, Miles Detailing. Call 240-273-4018 or contact on Instagram at Miles Detailing to book your service today. Mention Red Zone in the Lab podcast for 10% off detail services only. Ride in style with Miles. Detailing, that is.
Welcome back to Red Zone in the Lab with Deuce.
To the linebackers a little bit. Just give me something on John Bostic and David Mayo that I could take back to these Twitter conversations, something positive about them bringing them back.
So, I mean, if those people on Twitter are watching film, I think they'd see that Mayo's a good football player. And he's good in a very specific way. Like, I think there's been talk about him in training camp getting starts over Jamin in certain situations, like first and second down, short yardage situations, goal line situations. And there's a reason for that. It's because Mayo excels in those situations. He's very instinctive in running situations. He's very good at taking on blockers. He's physical. He's aggressive. Like all the things you'd want in a linebacker from 15 years ago, right? Like he would be perfect for the NFL 15 years ago, right? So I think that's good. He's a good football player. He's smart. Is he somewhat limited as a coverage player? Yes. But I think a lot of linebackers in the NFL are limited, even good ones, like just because like they have bad matchups, like when you got a matchup versus Darren Waller and then the next play matchup against Hunter Renfrow, like you're going to look like an idiot.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to keep in mind. Like I think he's a good backup player who adds value on teams. That's excellent. And I think Bostic's an interesting guy. I think, you want depth, right? And he can be a depth piece for you. Like he's a solid football player. I think the thing that is frustrating about when you watch Bostic is he's doing the right thing, but he doesn't always make the play. And I think that's the thing about him that's really frustrating. But again, a very instinctive guy, very, very smart player. And I think when you have two young players, having two veterans like that can mentor and guide and help with the film study and help with kind of practice habits, I think that's really important, And so as much as people want to say, we don't have depth, like I think they're fine depth pieces. And I think in some ways they're perfect depth pieces for this team because they do allow a certain level of mentorship for those guys. And I don't really obviously I hope that they don't have to play, because I want Mayo and I want Holcomb and Jamin to be on the field. But I think that they will provide a level of mentorship that will help those guys develop. And I think that is extremely important.
All right, let's talk about Scott Turner, some of his concepts. If you could just, your understanding of his offense and how can these skill players that we have, I believe we have great skill players. We have one of the fastest wide receiver rooms. I think J.D. McKissick is one of the best out the backfield passing backs. Give me Scott Turner.
Yeah, so I think that is to me that is the most significant question going to this Jacksonville game. I think he's been given all these new toys, right? Terry McLaurin is re-signed. He signed to an extension, however you want to word that. Curtis Samuel is healthy. Jahan's back. Logan's getting healthy. Cole Turner looked excellent when he was healthy in training camp. You mentioned McKissick. You mentioned Gibson. And he's got Carson Wentz now, right? Mm-hmm. Which was supposedly the piece that was missing from this formula for the last couple of years since he's been here. And the thing is that's really frustrating about watching Scott and watching this team in the preseason in general is that they've kept a lot of who they want to be in season close to the chest, right? So all I can go off of is what they've told us, which is they want to be a vertical passing attack that throws deep to open up the middle and intermediate pass routes, right? And I think that you've seen a little bit of that. I wish if that's who they want to be, I wish they would have been more efficient in that area during training camp. But again, they could still be working on some of those concepts and finding out what Carson wants to be. And then I'd like to see him be a little bit more creative in terms of personnel, right? Formationing so you get Terry more targets. You get formation so you get Curtis Samuel in a good situation to be successful. And last year we didn't see a ton of that. But again, he didn't have the pieces or the weapons in place to get that done. Now, to me, there's no real question, quite frankly. He is like, this is it. Show us. You've been saying, you can't do what you want to do because of lack of personnel, because of lack of quarterback. And now those pieces are here, right? So let's see what it is. And I think that's, to me, again, that's the biggest question mark I have going into the year is how does Scott Turner elevate this offense? Is he one of those guys who can make this offense better in the same way a Kyle Shanahan or a Sean McVay can, when they were here? So again, that's the thing I'm watching most acutely. And I can only give you really high level what they want to be. They want to be a vertical passing attack that opens up the intermediate stuff with that vertical passing game to make bigger throwing windows. In theory, that works well, but how do you set that up? How do you insulate the offensive line during those situations? So again, want to see all of that moving into week 1.
And I think it's very important for me. I always wanted my OC to be on the field during game days, and him making that adjustment. How much of an effect is that going to have with Carson Wentz? Because I'm thinking he did it because maybe Carson Wentz, talked to him about it, or maybe wanted him to be on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are advantages and disadvantages to both. Like, some people prefer to be up in the box because it helps them see the field a little bit better, helps them see the alignments, helps them see generally how the defensive coordinator is trying to attack them. And so some people prefer to be up there. And I've played with some very good offensive coordinators who prefer to be up in the booth, right? But I think you bring up a great point. Like, situation kind of dictates that there are different reactions and different responses. So I think it's really smart, like, that with a new quarterback, a guy that's very talented, get on the sideline, feel kind of the energy and the emotion of the team, be able to communicate with Carson kind of at a moment's notice. Like, I coach high school football, right? And first 2 weeks, our OC or our pass game coordinator was in the box, right? And eventually we were like, he needs to be on the sideline because he needs to talk to the quarterback in between the series, And again, like, we're going to try that out this week, but I think there's value there to kind of go in, have a little powwow with the guy, keep the energy positive and constructive, and then move on to the next series. So I think it's good for him. But again, in terms of, is it better or worse? Like, I don't think it's better. I think the advantages are what we just talked about. And I also think if you're going to come to the sideline, you need to have someone in the booth that you trust implicitly to identify the things that you're looking for. And hopefully they have that guy on the staff.
Do you sit back and say, man, these walls just need something? Feel like it's time to freshen up your place with something new? If your answer is yes, then it's time to call Rob of Lewis Paints Plus, the accent wall expert. Rob will even give you a free estimate on how he can transform those boring walls in your home. To book today, call 240-418-5241 or reach out on Instagram at Lewis Paints Plus. And for 10% off, tell him Red Zone sent you.
When it comes to Antonio Gibson, and it was sad what happened to Brian Robinson.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was very sad, disappointing that it happened maybe 10, 15 minutes from 10 minutes from where I am now.
Dang,
so
man.
That's very sad that happened. Because I actually can go to work and I'll go right past there exactly where it happened there. So it's very sad. The preseason game when Antonio Gibson, when he didn't come out as the starter, and the role he had, of course, Samuels wasn't. Curtis Samuels was already off the field. JD didn't play that game, so that role that he played, of course, he was running the ball, but they also had him kind of doing some things that Samuel does and some things that JD McKissick does. When Robinson does come back, where do you see Antonio Gibson in this offense? Because I know I'm not Mark Bullock. I'm quite sure you know who he is. He's kind of concerned to see where he's actually going to fit. Where do you think he's going to fit in this offense?
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit concerned about that too. And I think one of the reasons is he's not quite as good of a runner as Brian Robinson from a vision standpoint. He's not quite as good as a receiver as McKissick. So I think that's the thing where it's like, well, where does he fit in? Who does he take touches from? And I think he deserves touches. It's just about, is this staff, Scott Turner, the running back coach, Randy Jordan, are they mature enough to kind of identify what he's successful at? To my eye, he's a good space player. So can you get him some gadget touches? Can you get him some screens? Can you get him pass concepts like they did against Kansas City, where he has the opportunity to be in space and make people miss? And I think that's what I'd like to see from the staff is, much like they use Pollard in Dallas, where when he comes in for specific kind of home run game plan type plays, like let's use Gibson in that way. And I think that would be very intelligent by the staff, right? Find ways to make it easy on him, easy reads, and get him into space, much like you would a kick returner or a punt returner. So I think that would be my utilization package. But again, like it's tough when you've got a whole bunch of good football players. It's tough to be like, oh, hey, we need to get this guy his touches, because in some ways it hampers the offense. It restricts what the offense does really well. So you got to execute your offense kind of normally while also trying to appease the playmakers. And I think the Gibson situation is a very good example of why that's problematic potentially.
Yeah, because like on the screen pass he took last year, well, I think it was a hitch, and he took it like 70-something yards. I think that right there is what I'm expecting from Gibson, to be able to be out there, because if you have him and Gibson and Samuel on the field at the same time, it's something that we can salivate over to see if Scott Turner is really able to bring this potential out from these players. Yeah,
and it is tough though, because I mean you've got all these playmakers, but maybe McKissick's more effective in this role, maybe Samuel's more effective in this role. And the thing about Gibson is he's a playmaker, and it's hard to utilize pure playmakers in today's NFL. And what I mean by that is like McKissick's really good on third down. He makes plays on third down because he's an excellent route runner, right? And Gibson, it's like he's not as good a route runner, right? He's not as good as reading runs. So you have to kind of manufacture these opportunities for him. And those things are very, very hard to do and not augment the flow of the game. So I think he'll get a lot of touches this weekend, and hopefully he plays really well and the fans are, supportive of him and all that kind of thing. Because I think he's a good football player. No doubt.
Do too.
But when Robinson comes back, it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out for sure.
I appreciate that. So before I let you go, I want to go back a few years. Okay. Yesterday we was talking about 2012. Okay. You were very instrumental in that year. Watching some highlights from that year, you scored some touchdowns. So what was that? Because for younger fans, like I shared with you before, I experienced RFK. Some of the younger fans did not experience RFK. What they experienced was RG3 2012. What was that experience like in Ashburn during 2012?
I mean, I don't want to oversell it, but it was the best time I've ever had playing football. Yeah. Really. You know what I mean? It was like because like when you're winning football games, man, in the NFL, there's nothing better. Coaches are happy, strength staff happy, training staff's happy,
local media happy.
Yeah, local media is happy, players are happy. And I just felt like we were untouchable, and we could beat anybody on any given Sunday. We'd go into a game, and I've never played like this before or since, but we knew we were going to win the game. And that was a very liberating feeling, right? Because there's no doubt, there's no worry, there's no rumination or concern. It's just like, we're going to win. And that is the fantastic feeling. And everyone's executing at a high level. And, like there's nothing better than winning football games in the NFL. Like there isn't. And so I look back on that. And the other thing that was really cool about that year is full of hope, kind of moving forward. It's like, this is who we're going to be for the next 10 years. Like I'm going to be in Washington for 15 years. My career is going to be forever because the system insulates me and my skill set. And, Robert's going to protect us, and we're going to just ball out and win all these, go to the playoffs every year. And obviously that changed pretty dramatically, but it was a really great time to be a Washington football team commander, Redskin player. And, it was great. It was great. Yeah, it was good. It's good to look back on that year. But there you have it. That is Logan Paulsen. Please let us know everything that you are working on, how we can follow you. Yeah, so you can give me a follow on Instagram, Logan_Paulsen82. Appreciate that. Obviously, my podcast, the Take Command Podcast with Craig Hoffman, where you can find that wherever you get your podcasts. Shout out to the new Murray man. Yeah, that's right. Shout out to Craig, man. He's no longer single. Yeah, there you go. And then obviously I do all that stuff with Julie. You can follow them on Washington Commanders YouTube page. That'd be great. And then I got a pregame radio show coming up. 10 to 1 on 106.7 The Fan. So check that out. We're going to do like a breakdown of Jacksonville and all that stuff leading up like we did last year. So please check that out. Yeah, that's going to be cool. That's going to be cool. Thank you so much again, Logan, for joining the show. We appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you, everyone out there who has watched, who
has listened. This is Red Zone in the Lab podcast. I am Dion Deuce Blackney. One beat, one sound, one heart, one love.
Thank you for listening to Red Zone in the Lab podcast. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Red Zone in the Lab. And you can download our podcast at Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. And please visit our website at redzoneinTheLab.com. Thank you.